Hi, I'm Mark Reed. Follow me as I attempt to put my new book, Impact Culture, into practice and discuss it with others taking a similar journey. You'll get tips that will help you achieve more impact from your research and stay healthy, no matter how busy you are. Rediscover your purpose. Lead from behind to empower those around you. Transform your work culture. Welcome to Season 4 of the Fast Track Impact Podcast. Okay, so this week we are having a bit of a bridge between a series of episodes on mental health and a series that are coming up on evaluating and evidencing impact. And it is a bridge in more than one way, because here today I have with me the founder of the platform Bridged, and I'm going to get Sarah to spell that for us. I'll put a link to this in the show notes as well in a moment. But I'm very, very fortunate to have with me today Sarah Wijisinghe with us to tell us about this platform and why she created it. Now, talking to Sarah, it's been quite fascinating just hearing her journey and how this has emerged from her own research career. And I think that many of the themes in her own personal story are going to resonate with you. But most importantly, the platform itself, for me, really resonates because it fills a gap in what is, of course, a very crowded social media landscape. There are so many platforms that we can use to showcase our research, to build case studies and communicate what we're doing. But Bridge is fundamentally about enabling researchers to share their admittedly complex research in ways that are simple and that communicate the messages from their work powerfully with the wider public. So have a look around, click on the link. Maybe you want to, if you're listening to this and you're able to, you can have a look around as Sarah is speaking. If you want to try it out, you can just go in with a LinkedIn profile, Google, Facebook, I can't remember. I did it with LinkedIn. So it's very easy to just set it up and have a look around without any committing to the platform. And it is, of course, a free platform as well. So let's hear from Sarah now. So Sarah, thank you for making the time to come on, and thank you for following your heart and filling this gap and doing this work. I'm really excited about this, the new platform. But tell us a bit more about your journey, where you've come from, why you decided to set this up, and then what is Bridged? How does it work? What's it for?
All right. Thank you, Mark, first of all, for inviting me on your podcast. I'm really excited to speak about Bridged. For anyone who may be confused about the spelling, that's BRIJJD. All right. So yes, as you said, Bridge came into being with my own experience. I started my research journey when I was 26, and I started my PhD in 2016. And I was a very curious and excited researcher. I was excited to be in academia, to be in the backstage of academia. But, during my 6 years as a researcher, I realized and observed many things in the research reality and also in the academic reality that made me want to build Bridged. So maybe our listeners and also you, Mark, can resonate with some of the things that I have actually listed down here. So the number one is that, when you become a researcher, we also become trained to be academic writers, right? So the simplicity of writing itself becomes very technical, right? It forms you to follow these specific rules. And the quality of your research itself becomes, it's judged by the language that we use. So using the technical jargon of a field, along with so many other rules that we have to follow in order to get published, it works as a symbol of how well versed we are in a subject area, right? So you have to use the technical jargon to make yourself appear as an expert. If not, you will automatically be rejected, right? So, but the sad truth about this technical jargon is that it works as an obstacle, right? So while I was so excited to get my work published and have my name on it and etc., I also realized, and my excitement went down when I saw that neither my family nor my friends or my partner could understand what I was writing, right? So the technical jargon, sure, it made me feel like an expert, but I also saw that it worked as a mechanism to exclude people outside of our own so-called expert groups, right? And this also includes researchers from other disciplines who are not experts in our own specializations. So I recently wrote this article on LinkedIn as well, where I wrote that, we do research to understand the world, but unfortunately, we communicate our research in such a way that the world does not understand research. So we have made access to research this luxury, exclusive good that is only accessible to a few. Number two is that I saw that access to research is locked behind paywalls and technical jargon, and this works to exclude people. And number three is that my PhD journey was very isolating because I was in the tourism department, but my research was on coloniality and colonial structures of power. So I was this outcast amongst a sea of other PhD students who were looking into managerial topics. And I felt very isolated, and I wanted to connect with people who were in a similar subject area. But it was very difficult for me to find these people. I went on Google, I went on social media. I didn't even know how to find these people. I remember getting the names out of the publications that I was reading, and I would go and search on ResearchGate and try to connect that way. From my view, it shouldn't be this difficult to connect, right? And another one is that if I had questions about any of the work that I was reading, it was so one-way form of communication that I had no way of connecting with the researcher unless the corresponding author's email address was on the publication, right? And that itself is such a complicated process. It shouldn't be, okay? And another is that as a lecturer, I saw that my students, to whom I was recommending to read these journal articles and etc., they couldn't understand majority of it. And because they couldn't understand the articles and the academic work, which we made it a must for them to cite, they felt little in front of these publications. So our publications also make other people feel less intelligent, right? Because they're unable to navigate the technical jargon. So I saw many students give up trying to read and understand academic work, and I think this is very unfair and wrong. And I also saw that there was very little discourse about what happens and what you should be focusing on after you publish your work, because publishing your work is not the end to research, right? There's a lot, it's actually a beginning to the journey. And I saw that some researchers do put the effort to write newspaper columns from their research, but I also know that not everyone gets the access to publish on newspaper columns. And some take it to social media. And I saw many people, they would write a sentence or two and they would link their publication. But then again, people are bound to hit the wall of technical jargon, right? It doesn't guarantee understanding. Okay. Then we have science journalism as well, media sites that are dedicated to communicate science insights. But then something I saw there as well is that if there's 2 million publications in the world, only a few thousand would get attention, because for them it's about newsworthy content, right? So this way, only a minority of content would get attention. And there as well, there is very little two-way communication, because it's not the researcher who is dictating the content on these sites. So in general, I saw that there was this major divide between the researchers and the broader public. The researchers, as we term it, lives in this ivory tower, this exclusive space, and there is very little cross-communication between parties, when indeed there should be. Right? There should be, because if not, knowledge does not move beyond this ivory tower. And what really is the point of knowledge if it's not accessible for everyone? That's what I thought of during my research journey. So I thought to myself, okay, I also saw that many people would talk about these things, but there was very little being done. So I asked myself, okay, why isn't there any, a platform? I know there are scattered initiatives, forums, discussions happening, and etc. But something that can enable to close this gap between research and society. So it was all of these realizations, one after the other, I would say, that went into imagining Bridged. So that's the story of how we came to build Bridged.
Amazing. Thank you, Sarah. I think that one of the things that strikes me about this, your story, is how the realizations you came to as you researched colonial structures of power and knowledge actually effectively made you an outcast. You were questioning the structures of power and knowledge in your own institution, and then within your discipline and more broadly. And people don't want to listen to that. And in fact, on some subconscious level, I think many of us actually maybe quite like the fact that, well, we're really expert and we know what we're talking about, and we get all of this kudos and respect from people without realizing that actually we're making people feel little, as you described it. And that is because there is a power dynamic. We are putting ourselves over them. And I think one of the things that I love about this story is the way in which you have had the courage of your convictions to say, you know what, I've tried to fix these kind of things within the system. But actually, sitting outside the system, creating a platform like Bridge, continuing with your own research and scholarship alongside this. Yeah, this is how I can make a difference. Let's not just sit here and feel like an outcast, feel like this is overwhelming, that there's no escape. Actually, let's just get out of this and just try and actually start making a difference.
Yeah, and I would say, something I've realized upon launching Bridged as well, and also hearing the stories of other researchers, is that because we have been trained so much with these rules, that now to go back into creative forms of writing and communicating our research is rather difficult. To write in simple words, although should be simple, has become so difficult because you're not used to it. There are these scientific rules that comes into your mind when you're trying to simplify things and tells you in your mind that no, it shouldn't be this way. And, we are so used to using this technical jargon as well. But really, what I wanted was to create a social network, which is Bridged is essentially a social network where researchers come together, but not only researchers, but also the broader public. And a space where researchers have the autonomy to create simple content out of their research and tell the broader public stories from their research, right? Because it's not simply about, yes, I found this, and yeah, I found that, but it's about, okay, what sense can a person make out of your research, right? I hate using this word, but the real world context of research and how to put this knowledge into making sense about the world. And I know that there are social media platforms, but I also feel that because there's so many different kinds of user-generated content on these platforms, research perspectives just get bogged down. So I wanted to really create a platform where it's centralized on democratizing research, where people come together to connect with research knowledge. I wouldn't say this is the solution, but it is a solution towards bridging the gap.
Yeah, absolutely, and hence the name. So just to give people a bit of a flavour of what they can expect when they come onto the platform, and as I said, I would encourage you to have a look around yourself. I've put on 2 posts so far. One as a short article, and so I can embed images, and I've put in a small infographic into that article. But I can link then to the original article with its DOI, etc. And the same, the other one that I've put on is a podcast. So if you've been listening to the podcast, you'll know that in this season I've scattered through a number of episodes on leading for impact. 5 of them so far, but they are scattered through many months of content. And the idea is every week for the next 5 weeks, I'll be putting out one of these episodes with a short description of what it's about and an infographic or image to accompany it. But again, you've got the link to the original publication in there, and that in this case is the accompanying blog. So you can kind of choose which way you want to go with this, to read the blog version or to listen to this. And of course, then comment boxes underneath where people can discuss the content with you. And of course, like any social platform, it's only as good as the content and the number of people who are on it, which is why I'm enjoying it. I believe in its mission. I would love for more of you to join and to put your ideas on and to tell your friends, and for this to snowball, because I think this has so much potential. So I'd like to ask you a couple more questions. And in particular, I think this is an interesting timing, given that in recent times we have had some issues with Twitter, Elon Musk actually taking over. And a lot of people quite concerned about what this will mean for the safety, the inclusivity, and other features of that platform. And this is a platform in which a lot of people have been successful in terms of communicating their research. I have to say, one of the reasons that I was attracted to Bridged was that on Twitter, I do have a lot of followers, but it's a very targeted Twitter audience. And so I'm targeting people who are interested in my environmental research, which are typically kind of high-level decision makers, people in policy and such like. And then people interested in research impact. In terms of the broader public, that's not why you would follow someone like me. There are science communicators and the like, and great. So in terms of reaching a new and wider audience, that was one of my motives for signing up to Bridged, compared to my very focused Twitter audience. But I wonder, what are your views on what's happening in Twitter? And I wonder to what extent Bridge isn't going to replace Twitter, because Twitter does other things. I'm not about to jump off, at least not yet. But how? What are your views on this, and how might Bridge help people who are concerned about what's happening in Twitter?
So I wouldn't say that Bridged is a replacement for Twitter, because they function for different purposes. But Bridged was brought into place especially to tackle these issues of misinformation and disinformation, right? Because many of social media platforms exist for anyone to voice their opinion, but opinion and research are have different functionalities and values. Right. So taking into consideration what's been happening in Twitter, especially the latest change of the subscription fee a month to get the account verification or the popular verification tick. Now, this used to be once upon a time a feature that was only given to celebrities or journalists and influencers and etc. And this also meant that in this system, the algorithm favored and boosted the content of the users who had this verification tag. Now, bringing this into a paid system means that anyone, regardless of the popularity factor, would be able to pay and get their voice heard more than others, right? But before talking about this situation, I thought about the implication of the verification tag itself. You see, the verification tag works as a status symbol. It's a symbol of authority in determining whose voice is heard more amongst the lot, right? So it carries a deep meaning within the community itself, that when we see the verification tag, we assume the importance of the person and what they have to say, right? So previously, those who fit into a certain criteria was granted this tag. So it had that exclusive factor as well. And this was granted predominantly based on popularity. And I would say this in itself is problematic, right? And it created a lot of disparities in terms of whose voice is heard more. But on top of these disparities of the blue tag, now where the popularity factor was built into, now we have it in a different way where anyone would be able to pay and get it done. And I would say that this can go into all forms of manipulation of opinion, I feel, in my opinion. But I would say the tag in itself, from its previous state to its state now, had issues overall. So for example, I saw your profile on Twitter and you do not have a verification tag or that blue tick, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that the value of your opinion or the insights that you have to share is less of value, does it? But the system has made it into a way that the blue tag carries a specific value that gives more authority to the voice. You are a professor in your field and you've conducted years of research into understanding a particular area. But even with that, because you do not carry the blue tick in the community, your perspectives are still lesser in the grand scheme of things as compared. Right? So that is it had become more of a popularity contest. Now, on one end, Elon Musk says this is about decentralization, it's about free speech. And one could say that, yeah, sure. Now, it's no longer about the popularity factor and you fitting into a criteria where it's so exclusive. Now, anyone can pay for it and go for it. Right? But on the other hand, it's the greater implications of that. Either way, in my opinion, we had issues because of the meaning we had attached to that blue tick. Right? So there has been... sorry.
I think so. I did in the early days of Twitter for over a number of years attempt to get a blue tick and was unable to, and I was unable to find out what the criteria were. I was unable to find out what the application process was. I tried multiple times, multiple routes, through backdoors, people who'd got it already. How did you get it? And everyone told me different things. So it was completely obscure as to who got them. And I would agree that it is the blue tick itself is problematic. It was, I would argue, quite deeply problematic before, given that this was a popularity contest. in which nobody knew what the rules were. So someone somewhere was deciding who got it, and many academics, but many don't, despite trying. But what we have now is a different, more transparent way of biasing that information out towards those who can afford the blue tick, and you could argue that it's problematic, less problematic. The reality is, it is still problematic.
Yeah, I feel that, we need to kind of question the value that we have given to the blue tick, and the voices we listen to, and the voices we give priority to in that space because of that blue tick.
Yeah, and I think that it's also important, as we're thinking, what do we do? Do we stay? Do we leave? I think there are a lot of groups who have found solace, support, help, who have created their own networks within this platform that are incredibly healthy, positive places. And whether that is by very careful curation or whether it is actually an accident of, in my case, my gender, race, etc., I don't have the same risk factors as many other people do when it comes to trolling. But this can be a very supportive place for many people, and for that rug to be pulled out from them is causing a lot of anxiety amongst many groups on Twitter, and so I think we need to think about this and ask ourselves, well, what can we do in a changing online environment to adapt and to continue to protect ourselves and the networks that we value. But yeah, who knows? I mean, if this does become an entirely toxic place, then people will vote with their feet, and for good reason. And that is another way of adapting. But I don't think, at least I'm not there yet. And I think that coming back to Bridged, this is very much an attempt to do what Elon Musk claims he is doing in terms of democratizing a platform, except without the problematic approach that Elon Musk is taking to the blue tick and other things that he's doing.
I mean, I thought about this, let's say now this is going to change and someone would be able to pay for it. So what are you really paying for? I thought about that. I mean, what are the assumed benefits that would come about from having that blue tick, provided the fact that everyone in the community would now know that it is something that you can get by paying. So I thought about this as well. I didn't come to an answer. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on who your community is. Despite wanting to get that blue tick when Twitter was first around, and when I was first on it many years ago, I think twice about this now. I have not pursued this for many years because I look at who has that blue tick and ask myself, is that a club I want to be seen to be part of? And I think that given my own privilege to then say, rich white man has now paid to get a blue tick, is that a look I want? I'm not entirely sure that I do. As you said, it's possible to get influence without that. In my experience, the algorithms also register the number of followers and the amount of interaction you get. So if you can get to kind of the 10,000 followers mark and you regularly put out things that get attention, for important or threads, I will put them out to other influencers and ask them, can you retweet this, amplify this message to help that? And then the algorithms begin to notice, okay, this must be an important account. And ultimately what Twitter wants is for the best content. And when best, this is not necessarily the most accurate, reliable, best as in most liked content, to get in front of the most eyes, because it assumes that if some people like this, other people will like this. It adds value to their platform and to their users. And so I would argue that ultimately it is about creating value for your community and doing so in a way that gets enough attention to then create that snowball effect. And that's an alternative way to game the algorithms without having to pay.
Yeah, definitely. I think predominantly in many settings we exist in a reality where quantity kind of sort of determines quality. For me, that's problematic in general. I think this exists in research as well, that we assume that the research with the most citations, for example, is of the greatest quality. But to disrupt this value system is a great challenge.
But I mean, this is. I want to come back to Bridged and a final question, if I may, because this is about the quality of the material. So this is linked to research publications by and large with DOIs, and then communicated via the Bridge posts in simple language. What is your hope for the platform? What impact do you want this to have? That could be your own personal impact compared to what you were able to have as a researcher, as a lecturer. But it could be my impact, other people's individual impact as users of the platform, or perhaps collectively, the impact of this platform and those who engage. What are your hopes?
Really, when I imagine Bridged at its most fruitful place, I really want it to be a space where anyone and everyone come together to get the latest insights from research from any discipline, because we always talk about the lack of scientific literacy. We always talk about this gap between research and society. We always talk about the issues of misinformation, disinformation, and fake news, and the need for society to be informed together, right? But in order to enable all of this, we also have to act our part, right? That knowledge lives with the researchers. And yes, we do communicate it, but we communicate it sadly in a way that majority cannot understand it. So Bridged is to create an impact where you are enabling society to be informed together, where you actually connect with people beyond your scientific peer groups. Instead of just speaking between your peers, you would be speaking and connecting with the broader public. And I believe that when we create these connections, we can finally think about being an informed society. But in order to make that happen, we individually have to put the effort towards enabling that. And I think, researchers, we have a wealth of information, and we need to put this information to use and not just be these experts who give advice to other people, but let people have this information so they can also enable themselves to think. Right? So Bridged is for that, to come together, to enabling this process of being an informed society, to bring attention to your own research by communicating it in simple words and allowing everyone to understand it, to break the barriers that we have in research, and enabling your students, the government, or the industry, or any everyday reader as well, to get themselves equipped with not simply opinion, but research-backed knowledge. Yeah.
Yes, and yes again to all of that. What an inspiring vision, and ultimately, this is back to you. If you're listening to this, is this something that you want to be part of? I'd certainly love to interact with you on Bridged. And would love to see this being the kind of success that you are outlining here, that vision. I'd love to see that become reality. So, Sarah, thank you for your time and the best wishes with scaling your platform and building out this vision. Thank you, Sarah. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Mark, for inviting me today as well. And I hope to see you all on Bridged.